Hello everybody, it's the Gruppeteer, and I'm back again with another episode of Cartoons vs. Cancer, the show where we help raise money for my friend Madeline's post-cancer treatment bills by interviewing all your favorite cartoon creators. And today's is a very special guest, Mr. Bruce Smith is with us today. Oh, that's a tongue twister. And he is the director of such great films as Bebe's Kids and the creator of such shows as The Proud Family. He also works as the supervising animator on pretty much every cool Disney animated hero ever, including the coolest Disney villain ever, Dr. Facilier. And I guess,
yes, there you go.
I guess that might be where I want to start off. Where'd the name Facilier come from?
That's a good question. Well, originally the directors, Ron and John, Ron Clements and John Musker, who directed Moana.
Yeah.
Before they ventured into the 3D universe, I think their last film was Princess and the Frog, and the original character's name was Dr. Duvalier. Actually, what happened was there was an actual, I think, a Dr. Duvalier in New Orleans who was probably practicing black magic to some degree.
Oh yeah.
So I think Disney thought it would be much more appropriate to steer away from that specific character's name. And so Facilier was a mashup of a couple of things. That's all I remember.
Yeah.
The character never had a first name. Someone asked me about that on Twitter once. But I think there's some sort of metaphoric definition of that name. Yeah. I'll have to look it up.
And just slipped my mind. Of course, if you would like to donate to my friend Madeline, the reason that this show exists, there is a link in the description below. And also, I forgot to mention, obviously, Bruce isn't in the studio with us today. So we've got his spirit, mind, and body with our friend on the other side, meaning that he lives in California. And we have him in these neat, totally witch doctor things that I didn't just pull out from. Don't worry about it. We got a high production value here. And look, I even got my own voodoo doll. Yep, cool. All right, yep, anyway. So, like I said, you directed Bebe's Kids, and you actually are the first person I've had on my show who directed a PG-13 movie. The thing being, watching Bebe's Kids, it's not really that inappropriate, is it? Was there any reason that you got the PG-13 rating?
That's a good question. Well, originally when we started the film, we were contractually obligated to deliver a PG-rated film.
Yeah.
And somewhere along the line, the script really never changed. We submitted all the things that we needed to submit at the time. And you got to be mindful that this was like 1992. This is sort of like the sort of uprising of a very rebellious culture in hip hop,
Yeah.
And the film was rooted in that sort of in that mindset and that attitude.
Mm-hmm.
So you take that ingredient and then you sort of mix in the fact that these were kids who didn't come from a sort of how would you say a pleasant environment.
Oh yeah.
So you lump that in with, just if you remember that time, that was the time of the LA riots.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of things that was happening at the time that all of a sudden this film began to just sort of take a kind of a different type of I would say it would just have a different type of attitude for the time that it was being produced. Listen, I grew up in South Central, so all these things that we were putting in the movie, I knew about really well. We had some artists on the project that were very afraid because they didn't necessarily understand exactly what the project was and who these characters were. And so some artists kind of jumped off the project because they didn't want to sort of, I guess, influence gang culture.
Yeah.
Which our film was not about at all. But I think just because the general disposition of some of the characters, they kind of probably felt a little bit uncomfortable with. It was new. It was new for everybody. It was, you having black characters on the screen, in this in this way. We hadn't had that pretty much forever. Even Fat Albert, although they were from the ghetto, they were very friendly, you know,
Yeah.
participants of the ghetto, so to speak. So, but ours weren't. We were kind of in your face. I mean, Reggie Hudlin wrote a very in your face script, as much as we could be for an animated film at the time, where Disney was doing Beauty and the Beast, and you had, that Swan movie that
the Swan
that was being
Swan
produced.
Bride, the Swan Princess.
Swan Princess. So
Yeah.
that was sort of the vision of animation at the time, and we kind of came in through banging on the back door, with three unruly kids,
Yeah.
and a comedian that that wasn't completely embraced by America yet, although he was the beginnings of all things Def Jam and all, the original Kings of Comedy, Bernie Mac, Steve Harvey, these guys, they embody all the things that Robin Harris began.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of new beginnings, and I think the ratings board wasn't necessarily ready for this in the climate of what animation was supposed to represent. So really, when we submitted the movie, they simply said, you know what, this is rated PG-13.
Yeah.
Came back with that PG-13 rating, and we were all like, why? There's no nudity. There's no, there's no cursing. There's no swearing. There's nothing like that. Why? And the only thing they told us was tone. And we were like, Tone Loc?
Yeah.
because Tone Loc played the little Pee-wee in the movie. But that was our only, that was the only thing that we got, was it was just simply the tone of the film garnered its PG-13 rating. It's silly now because, when I produced the series Proud Family, the Proud Family probably had a little bit more attitude than what Bebe's Kids did, and the Proud Family was on the Disney Channel. So it just kind of tells you what the times will dictate. Again, that was a good 25 years ago almost now that we did that movie. So times have changed. I think that movie released in this environment today is easily a PG movie, a very soft PG movie.
Yeah. So growing up in, South Central, and especially watching a lot of your works, there is, like you said, a little bit of attitude. But what I really see is there's a lot of like hip hop sort of influenced in it. Is there any place where that came from?
For me?
Yeah.
You're speaking of just the hip hop in the film, or just simply my kind of swag that I may bring to something?
Yeah, the swag you bring.
Well, I mean, listen, like I said, I grew up in an area where, I was surrounded by, great R&B music and all the sort of African-American performers that grew up on that stuff, the 70s. And so, I mean, I was just talking about this the other day, just in general, about, a lot of the cutting edge sitcoms came up through Norman Lear at the time, who produced All in Family, created, and that spun off from the Jeffersons, and Jefferson spun off Good Times, and also All in the Family spun off Maude. And when you think about those series in general, they tackled a lot of really relevant social issues in a very fun way. And I grew up on that, wanting to, loving animation, but not necessarily having animation that spoke in that same rhythm. So I just thought that, as soon as I get old enough to do this, I want to be able to create, produce characters, stories that spoke to me in that way, if I ever got the opportunity to. Because listen, I'm somewhat of an anomaly in this business. So you're not going to find many African Americans in this business alone, and then you've got to figure out, okay, how many African Americans in this business can actually make something, can actually have the ability to actually, create their own projects or have a real voice in this business. You've got to really travel through certain avenues and have a certain degree of respected ability to draw these characters or tell these stories in this river of the legacy of animation doesn't necessarily point kindly to African American characters. When you're talking about early on in 30s and 40s, when Warner Brothers was, while creating really great, shorts, they weren't too kind to the culture. So and that's what people were aware of when you present Black characters to them, that's the first thing they think of is how safe is this?
Yeah.
How can we actually make this and actually be, embraced by, what we call now sort of the 4 quadrant concept of storytelling. And, listen, I think in this day and age where you see it's all around you now. I mean, hip hop influences culture in a major way now. What we were doing 25 years ago was on the cutting edge. And I guess at that time, a lot of people wasn't ready to embrace it. So but it still doesn't stop me. I mean, I feel like it's just another wall that you kind of creatively have to break down. And to be honest, that's the challenges that I deal with every day. And I love it. I mean, I accept the challenge and I love creating characters that I feel like people hadn't seen before that aren't necessarily from the cookie cutter base of creating characters for TV or film.
Yeah, that's really interesting to think, and sort of on the coattails of, presenting things that people might not want to, look straight on and address. The Proud Family, I mean, thinking back now, it's got to be 10 years old at least. And, it tackled, using Black History Month and Kwanzaa and all these. And I remember one episode, and I was just a little kid when this happened. And I think Penny met this this Middle Eastern family. And they come home from like this dinner or whatever, and somebody spray painted like "Go back to your country" on like their garage, and I was like, "This is the Disney Channel," and now I think of it now, and like, do you think of yourself as the guy who has like the balls to do it, or were you ever like afraid to do something like that?
We were never afraid of really, once we had the opportunity, and mind you, it's never me by myself. I mean, like I had to make sure that I assembled a group of people who really understood the vision of where to take this sort of coming of age story, Black teenage girl coming of age stories, and and really shape them and mold them and get to that point where we can actually tell a story like that you just mentioned. So I mean, get a huge shout out to Ralph Farquhar, Calvin Brown, and Doreen Spicer, and this is the writing crew that we'd huddle and talk about things that we want to tackle and what we wanted Penny to say, that we thought was relevant, or at least things that we know we'd be talking about, in the coming years, at least, So that was the thought that was given to that show. And you're right. I mean, like those are issues that we're talking about right now. In this Trump era, this is what we're going to be talking about. This is what we're going to be dealing with. But you're right. We were doing this, 12, 13, 14, 15 years ago now, I think it is. So, and that made it made it fun. That's the challenge. And we laughed with it. But we wanted a lot of things to sort of resonate along the way.
Yeah. So a lot of you're the first person I've had actually who's made a show on the Disney Channel, and I guess if you're allowed to tell us, because you did get away with making such not in your face, I guess, but issues that a lot of people don't want to address. Is Disney really like the censorship king that everybody says they are when it comes to like making things just for kids, or are they really accepting of the ideas that you brought to them?
I think they were really accepting to the ideas, and listen, they were walking this road with us. I mean, a lot of things that we were doing, we were pitching to them, and they questioned a lot of stuff. I remember those first few episodes, we changed a lot of stuff at the last minute because, listen, it's the network. This is the first time they were doing something like this. So, there were a lot of panic buttons that were thrown about early on, but once they got comfortable with what the ideas were, and that they trusted us and they knew we were going to be responsible in telling these stories, I think they kind of, pulled back a bit and let us really kind of be free. And especially, when the ratings came back and they saw the people watching and the responses that they were getting, and they really allowed us to create the show that we wanted to make. Now, mind you, the only thing with the Disney Channel is that with every show that they've had, they've only produced so many episodes. So truthfully, by the time we were really getting our stride, we were at our fill of episodes, So that was the only thing with us. Like, man, we get these characters now, the world, we completely understand. We're adding characters to this world that are, being embraced. And one thing that you couldn't find in any of the other shows that they were making at the time, that was in our world it was really a world of inclusion. I mean, we had everyone from, I mean, naturally, we had the African American characters, but also within that, the characters span the diaspora of who we are. So you had the really sort of crazy out of bounds characters, but we also had the really grounded characters that actually make sense and bring, smartness and intelligence to your world. That's kind of how this world is made up. And then we also had Penny, as she began to explore things and people that she wanted to date and stuff like that. I mean, we had her date everybody from dating within her race. She was dating outside of her race. She was dating handicapped kids. I mean, like it was just this real world that really, as we fleshed it out, it just simply all made sense. It wasn't anything that was forced. I mean, it was how we saw the world. It was how the writers saw the world, how myself saw the world, and we're getting people that were actually the directors. Some directors bringing them on board so they can actually, because they never produced a show like this. They never made a show like this where they, have this sort of plethora of Black characters that they, are painting on the screen with different personalities. So, it's a challenge kind of straight up and down. And then, just the production challenges alone. But at the same time, we were really proud of what we were doing at the time. Excuse the pun, but, we were.
Oh. I'll let it slide. Don't worry about it. And on the subject of what you were saying about how you just got a certain amount of episodes, in the comments, Dipper723 would like to know why there were only 52 episodes when a lot of other Disney shows got 65, if there is a reason.
Actually, that's not true. We had 50 some odd episodes, but Kim Possible had the same amount of episodes. I think what happened was Phineas and Ferb was the only one that had the breakthrough.
Yeah.
And mainly because they had a certain, and I say this again, it's the time period. I think at the time, Disney Channel itself didn't have anything else animation-wise on the channel. And that was the one series that kind of took off and kind of covered that base. So they started to make merchandise, the Disney machine got behind it. And once that happens, I mean, like, listen, that Disney marketing machine is amazing. So once you've got that support, your projects can go through the stratosphere. And I mean, our project unfortunately didn't get that, but I think what we did is we laid the groundwork for other series to get bigger orders. And so so I think that's the reason why. I mean, that's what I was told. They just simply make so many episodes and they close their series out with a movie each time. So
yeah. And like you keep saying, obviously the Proud Family was on Disney Channel. But it wasn't always that way, right? You originally pitched it to Nickelodeon, no?
Right. So the genesis of the Proud Family was we actually pitched it to Nickelodeon. That was actually the first place we stopped. Actually, I'll take that back. The first place we stopped was the Disney TV, like TVA, right?
Yeah.
And at the time, there was an executive who was there who simply told us, he liked the pitch. He says, but we don't make stuff like this. You might want to take this to UPN. And as he said, as he laughed. Now, let me tell you what UPN is. UPN was a network out here in Los Angeles that simply was sort of like the urban outlet. Right. So all of the Black shows were on UPN. At that time, UPN had Moesha and Brothers from Outer Space and the Malcolm and Eddie. These were all Black shows, right? So what he was telling me is like, take this Black stuff to the Black show. Right. So it's kind of a slap in the face and an insult, but that's what I've been met with a lot of projects that I pitch anyway. People just have different ways of saying what he said, which was rather blunt. So it's exactly what we did. We simply took it to Nickelodeon. The executive there at the time knew that he saw through what it was. He saw the potential, what it could be. He knew that they didn't have anything on that channel that was what I was pitching. And so right away, he's like, well, let's do a pilot. Fantastic. So we did the pilot. And what happened after we did the pilot, Nickelodeon, now mind you what they do with these things, that they test them, right?
All right, yeah.
So you make a pilot, they take them to, the local whatever. Yeah. In most cases, they'll take them way out somewhere and test them, right?
Yeah.
So in this case, which is a bad idea, we made the pilot. and it was funny and still funny.
Yeah.
But they decided to test it in, like, I don't know, Calabasas. Some,
right.
I say this because some white rural area.
Yeah. I get
white
it,
rural areas they just did not get exactly what we were sort of putting on the screen.
Yeah.
And so they come back with all these notes of what they would do with the characters, which is completely like, I don't even understand what these people are talking about. I don't think they really grasp and understand who these characters are and where they come from. Mm-hmm. And so Nickelodeon kind of like held on to the pilot and held on through all of our options that we had contractually. Mm-hmm. And so Disney somehow at that time, Disney Channel, which is different from, TVA.
Yeah.
The executive there found this pilot, saw it, viewed it, and said, "Hey, look, where are you guys with this? Because it's really funny. We'd love to do something with this." And we let them know that we were in our whatever third option with Nickelodeon, and that's going to be up in another couple months. Says, "Well, if they decide to do it, I get it, but if they don't do it, just bring it to us." And that's exactly what happened. We had an option, a window, and Disney said, "Let's do it." So we just walked it across the street to the Disney Channel, and they were like, "Let's do it." So that's kind of how that worked out.
If you wouldn't mind, what was the time frame on sort of when you were pitching it to Nickelodeon?
Wow, probably 1999.
Oh,
I think we did the pilot. I think we did the pilot in 99, 2000. So by the time we got the green light from Disney, it was 2000 because the series took about a year to produce. So 2001 was when we came out. So right around that time. The idea originally I had right after I finished Space Jam, I just started developing the project on my own, and that's when I got with my producing partner Tom Wilhite, and right when I was working on Tarzan, I would just go home at night and start shaping these characters and stuff, and shaping the idea of what this family is, and shaping the characters around the family. And so that's kind of what we had when we did the pitch, was just that, So, so I knew the direction I wanted to take the story and the stories like that, but it was simply coming of age story. Yeah. Honestly, when we initially did the pitch, Penny was kind of like a side character because the show was really focused on this family that was raising two accident twins.
Yeah.
It's like late in age. So we had a daughter, but now we got these two twins. Because at the time, Nickelodeon had Rugrats. Yeah. And we were sort of doing our own sort of Rugrat version, except we were sort of aging it up. And we thought a perfect foil would be, a nice, 12-year-old girl, who just doesn't understand these accident twins. Now she's in the neglected, teen. And so Nickelodeon was like, "We really like her." And I said, "The story's all about her." It's kind of like the Jedi mind trick of pitching. You pitch them one thing and they pitch something back to you, and you throw it back to them and say, "That's exactly what the show's about."
Judo. That's judo right there. But right, if it was early 2000s Nick, like you say, probably would have aired around 2000, 2001. I really couldn't picture the Proud Family airing alongside like Invader Zim in the early days. That'd be a little bit of a juxtaposition.
It'd be a bit different, right? Yeah. See, but that's what I'm saying. It's like, but all these networks, when you pitch, they're always looking forward. So the stuff that you see on the air, even though it's always on the air, they're looking what the next phase is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was at Disney, I always pitched us what the next phase was 3 years from now. 3 years from now, kids are gonna be into quilted fashions. We need to come up with a show about quilts. It's like, really? What? Like, yeah. So they're always sort of looking ahead. So in this case here, they saw the rise of the sitcom. For me, it was always sort of like, I love The Simpsons and King of the Hill and stuff. It was like my answer to that show, basically. And I could have made it anyway. I could tailor it for a Nickelodeon, which is probably a bit more looser and more adult. Or the Disney Channel, kind of, okay, let me kind of like maybe dumb down the material, but at least soften the material, a bit. I'll soften the fabric for the Disney Channel. But I learned at the end of the day that I really didn't have to. Like soften a little bit, but then as we get into it, we really can sort of introduce, stuff that has a bit more of a rough edge and more meat to bite on.
And speaking of things that'll catch on, I keep telling you guys, the striped shirt and the yellow glasses, they'll catch on one day. I'll give you that. So you like like you said, you did all these shows, but like I said in the beginning, you were this magical thing in the animation world that they call a supervising animator, which means when you're making, and this is just I'm pretty sure this is primarily in 2D animation, but they obviously have it in 3D. When you're making a character, like he said, the witch doctor from Princess and the Frog, Bruce was like the guy who'd like just what. Actually, how about you explain it? What does a supervising animator do?
Supervising animator symbols. It's the guy who takes the character from he sets the tone, sets the style, sets the all the subtle nuances, the acting traits, and everything for the character throughout the film. It's being the actor in the movie.
Yeah.
Then you have a team of guys who are basically going to follow your lead, but you're the guy who is responsible pretty much for every bit of acting that you have on the screen. And so the privilege of it obviously is that you as a villain, because that's the prime role in any Disney film, is playing the villain. You really get to create a performance that you hope is always going to be memorable.
Yeah.
So if this were sports, it's like now I'm trying to pick my team of guys who are going to help me sort of bring this guy across the finish line. So you've got to really be careful how you pick your team, because that's the difference between hand-drawn animation and 3D animation, is that I always call 3D animation kind of the great neutralizer. You don't have to worry about a model sheet or anything like that. It's really taking the digital puppet and being able, all the animators kind of have the same moves and really understand exactly the performance of the character and just take it throughout the film. You don't have to worry about any of those drawing things that you got to deal with.
Yeah.
In hand drawn, you got to make sure that you pick your team appropriately. I mean, like if this animator here, yeah, he's really good at action, but man, his drawing is not so hot.
Yeah.
You've got to understand how to cast. So for me, it's like, okay, if I got to get this action guy who's really good at moving the character around, but his drawings are really bad, I've got to cast those shots to him appropriately. You know what I mean? It's okay, you can't necessarily, you're not ready for your close up yet, so I've got to really kind of get you into, catch you up with how to draw this character and really, have him be the guy on the screen that we all are depending on him to be.
Yeah.
And so it definitely has its challenges.
I did have a follow-up question to that, but the second you said making a sports team, I just got to get this question out of my head right now. While working on Space Jam, which you did, obviously Michael Jordan was in it, and he'd play basketball with a lot of the staff members in this little lot that they made in the Warner Brothers studio lot. And legend has it that you played against him, right? Is that true?
Legend has it.
Is that?
Yeah. So that story.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that what happened was, every night there would be, this was between Michael Jordan's first retirement and him coming back to play, which was basically what the movie was about. And we shot it during that time period was it summer of '95, I guess. And it was exactly that. He had this great gym on the lot that had this sort of white, silvery dome. And every night he'd bring guys in there, and it would be like an all-star game every night. So anybody who was anybody in the NBA during that time period would come down, and it was kind of, NBA is kind of brotherhood. So all the guys, even if you see them on the court, they kind of hate each other. But, in this sort of like, nice little flighty summertime thing that Michael Jordan was sort of hosting every night was like this all-star game.
Yeah.
So you had, Reggie Miller and Charles Barkley and Patrick Ewing and, the guys were in the movie and then some,
really?
Magic came down, Magic Johnson came down, Shaq showed up a couple nights, Dennis Rodman.
Yeah.
I remember Dennis Rodman because he had hammer pants and he had his toes were painted. Oh. I don't know why I remember that, but I remember he played in open toe sandals and his toenails were painted. Remember that? It was strange. So, so I mean, and mind you, this is before social media, TMZ, all the outlets that are available now that you can actually track this stuff. So So what I tell you is completely mythology.
Oh yeah.
Right? So the one day, and I'm the animation director, so I'm there on the set every day.
Mm-hmm.
And we're there sort of like helping the director Joe Pica set up shots and drawing the characters. And we were producing this film in the days where analog hadn't completely met digital yet.
Yeah.
So we're using duct tape and spit to put stuff together.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, myself and Tony Cervoni, the co-director, we're drawing on monitors. We're really helping sort of stage a lot of stuff. And Michael was really curious about the process of film. So Michael and I would go into the gym afterwards sometimes, just kind of shoot around, and I would talk to him about what I do, and obviously we know what he does,
Yeah.
So we kind of formed this kind of cool bond at the time. And so one night, I told him, I played, a little bit of basketball in high school and such.
Yeah.
And I remember he said, I got to get you out on the court then one day, right? Because Michael's completely competitive in that sense, right?
Yeah. So
I laughed. I was like, yeah, you don't want none of this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But so that one day happened where we always go out there and we just shoot around and stuff like that. And then when the real pros step to the floor, we just kind of step off.
Yeah.
So you'd have all kind of people out there. You'd have and there would be a stand, like there'd be a row of seats on the side of the gym, and anytime in that row of seats, you would see anybody from Joan Collins to Urkel. You know what I mean? It's like it was just this sort of widespread range of celebrities that would come and see him play every night.
Wow.
So one night, I guess, when they were about to suit up and run, they were like a guy short, and I'm just out there, just kind of like talking to one of the animators and stuff. And so Michael turns to me and he says, "So Cap," he used to call me Cap all the time because I was like, I guess, captain of the animation team, I guess, right?
Yeah.
So he goes, "Cap," he said, "you want to lace them up and come out here?" And I'm like, wow. Right away I was kind of like, okay, sure. I mean, how do you say no? But I knew I should have said no. Like that thing.
Yeah.
So I'm there, man. I just remember like it was crazy because I'm 6'4". Like I'm a decent sized guy. But I remember when I walked out on the court, how short I felt. Like it was that thing where Michael's 6'6", and Marcus Johnson was out there. He's 6'7". His son is 6'5". I mean, I just felt like I was the shortest guy on the court, and I'm not used to being the shortest guy like anywhere, right?
Yeah.
But not only that, I was like felt short and fat. Like I just felt fat for some reason, and I was lean at that time. But man, those guys are completely like in shape, and it was a whole different world of basketball, I'll say.
Yeah.
So we got out there and shirts and skins, straight up, park style basketball. And I remember the very first time we're on the court, and Michael talks plenty of trash on the court. Like if anybody is familiar with NBA basketball, and if they ever decide to put microphones on the court, you would hear some pretty foul language, right?
Yeah.
So, and I remember Michael got the ball. He was up top of the key, and I remember the first time I realized that I'm in a basketball game was when he said he's going to treat all of us MFs like Cleveland, right? And he just took the ball and went to the basket and slammed on everybody. And what I remember about that is that I remember that Nike swoosh hitting me upside my forehead, just skidded across my forehead.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, I don't need to be out here at all. Body fell everywhere. It was pretty devastating. It was a pretty devastating dunk, I have to say. I mean, it definitely would have been on Shaqtin' a Fool. I know that.
Yeah.
So we got out there and we played a few games, and I just remember one of the last games that we played. The last game I decided to play, which was smart, was the game where and listen, if you know anything about playing park basketball, no one knows who you are. You're rarely going to get the ball.
Yeah.
I was that guy.
Yeah.
And mind you, I play, so but I knew that I wasn't going to get the ball much in this game.
Mm-hmm.
So that one time where I got the ball, and I just said, I'm going for mine. So I remember putting the ball through my legs, and go into the basket. And I'm the point that I put the ball through my legs, things just started happening. Like everybody started moving around and setting screens and all of this stuff. So I remember I was being Marcus, this sounds even weird for me to be saying. It sounds surreal. Marcus Johnson was sticking me, and anybody knows the NBA. Marcus Johnson was like, Milwaukee Bucks, UCLA, first round pick, all-star. He's sticking me. He gets screened off of me, and so I got this free ride to the basket. I'm thinking, but off of the screen comes Michael Jordan. So right away, me and Michael are going to the basket 1-on-1. Yeah. And it felt like it was slow motion, because I kind of started to panic.
Yeah.
So I remember going up, and mind you, this is all mythology. Who knows this is true or not? I just remember going up and one-handing on Michael Jordan myself. And I knew something happened because the whole stadium just went nuts. Oh, damn! Right? It was really crazy. So I knew I did something, but in my experience playing basketball, even when you do stuff like that, you have to act like you do it every day. Yeah. So you gotta not be excited about it. You just kind of like, you do it, and you just kind of run down court like, yo, you guys just don't know me. That's all. Like, I do this all the time. So I remember going down court now, and after that, everybody's laughing because Michael got scored on by the cartoon guy. That was what was being yelled out. So, and Michael, if you know anything about Michael Jordan, if you saw his press conference when he was going into the Hall of Fame, he brought people, to that to that broadcast to show them how great he was, basically. So he brought the guy who he brought the coach who cut him in high school to let him know that you fueled me by cutting me in my high school. That's what Michael did. He brought the guy who took his spot on the team to let him know that I'm Michael Jordan and you're not, basically, right? Yeah. So you can imagine how upset Michael was when I actually went up scored on him, and he was humiliated in his own house in front of everybody.
That's great.
So Michael steps to me. What are we rated here now?
you have the open mic. You're fine.
So Michael then steps to me as I'm running down court. He stops me dead in my tracks and looks at me up and down, and he called me, "You motherfucker!" And so I just ran right around him like he didn't say anything, and just kind of kept walking. You know what I mean? What are you supposed to do? And then he's supposed to do at this point. It's like, Michael, you just got yanked on by the cartoon guy. You know what I mean? So that story kind of like lived on through the rest of the production, because when we were in New York doing our press junket, I remember I'm walking into me and Tony Cervoni walked into the hotel suite where they were having the press interviews. Michael saw me walk in. I think Ahmad Rashad pointed out too. It was like, there's the cartoon guy, because it just continued to live on. And Michael Jordan turned and said, "No, he can't come in here. He got to get out of here. Get out of here." I was cracking up. It's like, Mike, come on, man. Yeah. Come on, dude. I'm just a cartoon guy. I won't tell nobody.
I'll give you this. I've had, Reuben Award winners on the show, Emmy winners, all that. None of that compares to someone who's slam dunked Michael Jordan. That's amazing.
That's all, like I said, that's all rumor. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm telling you what I remember that day,
Hey, I'll give you this until he comes on this show and proves you wrong.
Mike comes on that show, yes, I get exactly. I can't confirm or deny that it actually happened, but I remember. All right. Yeah,
I gotta get your trading cards sometime. That'll be great.
Hysterical that you say that, because weirdly enough, the other day I dreamt that I had a trading card. That was weird that you would just say that. That's so funny.
But back to animation. I forgot about that.
Yeah, there's not too many animators that actually can say that they actually took the court with Michael Jordan.
Yeah. So all right, focused. So anyway, Bebe's Kids. Okay, focused. Bebe's Kids. When it came out, like any movie, it's got all kinds of merchandise and that stuff. And Bebe's Kids didn't have too much as I can find, but it did have this game for the Super Nintendo called Bebe's Kids. And first, I'll ask you if you've ever played it. Have you?
I have never played that game, and I don't even know what it was about. Probably a lot of running involved, I'm guessing.
Yeah. So I'm guessing you know if you don't know what it's about, it is commonly regarded as one of the worst video games of all time.
Oh, there he is.
And yeah. And I've never played it, but it's famous for prompting this feud between two internet celebrities, the Nostalgia Critic and the Angry Video Game Nerd, where one of them challenged the other to play the worst game they could find. And this famous internet guy, his name's the Angry Video Game Nerd, gave this other guy the Bebe's Kids game to review because he tried to find the worst game he could find.
That's great. I love that. It's even worse than the E.T. game?
I guess. Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I can't say that it was buried in some Arizona desert, but I've never played it personally.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. I mean, I love that stuff, man, you know?
Yeah.
I can believe it. Listen, I would imagine, like I said, in that game, there's probably a lot of running involved because, you know, the video games, and black people love to run. So I'm guessing it's going to be a lot of that.
Yeah. So I guess if you don't know the Bebe's Kids game too well, I really don't have too much on to go on about. Unless, I don't know, if you have a Super Nintendo, I could like find a copy for you if you'd want one.
You know what's funny is that they gave me a copy. I remember like giving it to my kids, but I don't remember them playing it. That was oddly enough. So I remember the game. I just wasn't such a gamer back then, and I thought maybe they would have gotten into it. So maybe you're right. So maybe it wasn't because they're gamers, and they probably just like, you know what, we ain't telling this, but we just ain't gonna tell Dad that we ain't playing this.
Yeah. And like you say about your family, and you said it before, the Proud family, very based on the Smith family, I presume the Smith family. And how did the members of the family feel on their interpretations on the show?
Well, I mean, I listen, I think they got a kick off of it. I mean, you know, mainly, you know, Sugar Mama. Now, mind you, my mom is called Sugar Mama by all the kids and stuff like that. It's just kind of how she grew up. So yeah, she laughs at it all the time. You know, she had, for one of her birthdays, I mean, we got her personalized license plate that says Sugar Mama before the show came out.
Oh, yeah?
So after the show came out, she was like, I got to change my license plate because people pulling me over thinking that I'm Sugar Mama, you know? So, so she likes it. She, you know, she laughs at it and stuff like that. Puff was her dog.
Yeah.
And Puff was sort of this dog who kind of he was psychotic in some ways. I mean, a lot of those Puff stories for me were just simply like kind of, I have PTSD with that damn dog, basically, because you know he would do weird stuff where I remember like when I was like 16, 17 years old and I'd bring a girlfriend by the house and she'd be like, oh, that dog is so cute. And I'm like, don't touch him. Don't touch him. And she goes, she want to pet him. He just comes up, he runs up, jumps on you. He's licking you. He's so cute. He's so cute. Don't touch him. Don't touch him. Please don't touch him. And she's petting him. She's petting him. Then the moment that you scratch him on the chest, like, because that's a normal thing with a dog. You rub a dog on the chest and he's just like, oh, he just loves you. You rub Puff on his chest and he would just eat you up. And the girl just would run out of the house completely, traumatized. And I would just kick Puff across the room, you know, it would just bug me to no degree, to no end. So yeah, I mean, like Puff was a real character. Those characters were real. You know, Bobby Proud was sort of an amalgamation of lots of different R&B artists at the time. So, you know, me growing up in the 70s, you know, I loved groups like Earth, Wind and Fire and the Commodores, you know, Lionel Richie, you know, Maurice White and Confunction, and all the singers at that time always had that hook. The way they would sing their lyrics were always the same. And that's where that character came from. He would just be, ooh, child, oh, girl, I love you, girl. You know, just like all that stuff just was born from, you know, that character. And that was the character that probably the scariest for all the networks because because they just didn't understand him, and so we had to introduce Bobby in small doses. The irony in all that was that we had Cedric the Entertainer played Bobby, and he completely got who the character was. You know, Cedric has a very musical background, and out of all the characters on the show, that character won an NAACP award for best performance of an animated character. And you know, it's like, just because you don't understand it don't mean that it's not going to be embraced in the way that you think that it won't be embraced, you know. I mean, and I think Disney was proud of that. I think that they were very scared of that character when we first introduced him. You know, it's that's kind of indicative of a lot of projects that I kind of have in my head. Like, you first see it, you kind of get scared of it, then all of a sudden it gets embraced, and you're like, oh, I see now. I kind of see it. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, I was directing shorts over at a DTS, Disney Toon Studio, like for several years, and you know, so working with John Lasseter, my job was to basically create shorts that weren't necessarily telling the stories of the movies that they were making at the time, meaning that we were doing the Planes universe and the Tinkerbell universe, all CG projects. And listen, my background, I love Chuck Jones, I love Tex Avery, I love those types of shorts, the comedy, the broad comedy in those shorts. And a lot of my shorts were sort of, you know, in that aisle, you know, running that lane. And so a lot of times when I would pitch just the general concepts of just wild ideas to the Story Trust, a lot of guys are left scratching their head because they just didn't get that sort of real cartoon nature in these worlds that I was pitching them in. And but the key to all of that is, as long as you make John Lasseter laugh, you're all good, right? And everybody's always trying to second guess what John may think is funny. You know, John is he has an animation background. He loves that type of stuff. And so, you know, you're there with the Story Trust. Half of them get it, half of them don't. And it's left to you to sort of, you know, decipher all the ideas and hear all the noise within the Story Trust to be able to assemble something to show to John. So in some cases, I would take a lot of the advice, but in some cases where some of the directors who just didn't simply have that taste, I just wouldn't change anything, you know, and just roll the dice with John. It's scary rolling the dice with John sometimes because, you know, if he doesn't like something, he'll tell you, you know, but if he likes it, right? So, and that's what, for me, that's what this is about. I mean, I try to really keep my identity in everything that I try to do. So I wasn't ashamed to put my identity out there, you know, in the universe to kind of show what I think is funny, what I think is appealing and entertaining. And I remember showing my first set of shorts to John, and he laughed, and it was a big deal because everybody was sweating in the audience, you know, because they didn't know how John was going to respond to a lot of stuff. So if you ever pick up, you know, Planes DVD or the Planes 2 DVD, you'll see all my shorts there. And I'm sure you'll laugh when you say it, right? And I love doing shorts. I mean, you know, it's like, for me, it's a quicker turnaround. Sometimes when you're doing, you know, these films, man, you can be on these films for 6-7 years at a time. So the joke that was funny 6 years ago, you think is not funny now because you've seen it, you know, 70 times, 60, 70 times, and you're forgetting that first instinct of, you know, that first impression where you laughed at it when you first saw it. I try to remind people of that all the time. It's like, yeah, you've seen this over and over and over again, but you know, the audience hadn't seen any of this. So you really got to trust your comedic chops sometimes and kind of go with the flow, let things happen. And I think, you know, in the world that I like to sort of create in, there's a lot of quirky, weird, you know, odd things to laugh at. But at the end of the day, those are things that kind of continue to have the same reaction, the same laughter, that same jolt of humor that you got the first time you saw it, you'll get it even later. I try to stay ahead of the curve. Yeah.
And like you say, you know, staying ahead of the curve, and like you were saying before with, you know, making a lot of characters that you think say things you should be said. What kind of characters in the future, I guess, would you like to see in cartoons? And are there any, you know, out right now or that you've seen since you started animation that you really enjoy?
Well, I think what's cool now is that I mean, one of the things I really learned from John is that, and it was cool to really confirm, was that I was really like, even though I'm from LA, I just saw a lot of quirky stuff coming up and things that really make me laugh. That's not of the norm. Like a lot of my favorite films aren't on anybody's favorite film list. You know, I like a lot of bad stuff. I realize, like, I like a lot of really, you know, schlocky stuff from the '70s, and that stuff still makes me laugh. And you know, listen, I gravitate towards movies like Airplane. You know, the Zucker Brothers stuff was hilarious to me. And I haven't seen animation go in that direction before. Like, you know, but I love quirky characters. You know, I'm working on a project right now I would have loved to tell you about, but it's full of quirky characters. And it's just got this really crazy premise, but it's in a so familiar world that I feel like I'm doing exactly what everything that I've worked on and learned throughout my entire career is. I feel like it's being paid off right now in the project that I'm working on. So
really,
yeah, and it's because it's just a plethora of characters that we know, but also new ones that we feel like, okay, I get who this character is, and it's in a world that is all inclusive. You know, and that's what, you know, to be honest, that's what I wish a lot of our animated movies would go into more inclusion, you know, and I think that can change when the people who are making these movies really start to, you know, pepper their production crews and staff with the potpourri of people that go out and see these things, you know what I mean? Then we'll really start to see and feel ourselves more in these movies. Yeah, I'm sure, I haven't seen Moana yet, but I'm sure it's a beautiful movie. Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, and I, you know, and I'm happy that studios really sort of diving into different cultures to really tell stories. And I think that that's really what's going to move the needle on our business. You know, I was like extremely thrilled that we got a chance to see a movie like Sausage Party because it really opens up this flower of animation to be more than just one thing. You know, it's like once we're able to make movies, like I got heat for doing a PG-13 Bebe's Kids. Once we're allowed to make those PG-13 movies, I think the world will be much healthier in animation, and the medium will be taken more seriously and not just simply a kids medium. You know.
You can't you can't have the flame without the spark.
Exactly, and I think, you know, something like that being successful, I think opens up the envelope for lots of other ideas that are a bit more adult, without the concept of the tag of what adult means in cinema. You know what I mean? No, just a bit more mature. You know, things a bit more sophisticated, characters a bit more layered. You know, and not so you know, paint by numbers. You know what I mean? It's like sometimes you can predict what character's going to do and say just based on, okay, this movie's rated PG and it comes from, you know, name your studio, Disney, Blue Sky, blah blah blah. You know, like, you know what the character's going to do, what the outcome is going to be. But you know, when you open up the slate a little bit and you now have a different type of character that's telling your story, a different color, different influence, maybe we can now be prepared for some surprises, because you know what we know about this character, you know, by the time that when the film opens, it's not what this character is at the end of the movie, and maybe it's not a happy ending. You know what I mean? So I think once we're really allowed to have characters that really help us tell those types of stories, we'll be able to really open up this medium, and I think it's just endless in terms of the types of stories that we can tell. The technology is fantastic. Technology is allowing us to really make beautiful things now. But now we really need people who actually have riskier content to really jump at the helm and really try to tell more sophisticated stories.
Yeah. And unfortunately, this is almost all the time we have. But just hypothetically, if there's some little kid out there whose lava lamp only an hour into the interview finally started working, and he's wondering, you know, how does a guy get into animation? What advice would you give to them?
Oh, wow, man. Well, the beauty of today is that what we didn't have back in the day. I didn't have someone telling me how to get into this business. I just threw together a bunch of drawings and took them to CalArts like just on a whim and barely got in. That's kind of how everything kickstarted for me. But nowadays you have all these studios who make these great films. They have these making of books now. Everything that it took to make this movie, every department that was involved in making this movie. Pixar makes books. Disney makes wonderful books. Yeah. DreamWorks has books. You look at all these books, and it serves as a template for wherever you think your skill set lies. Yeah. So again, the animator can be a very general term to your parents if they don't have the breakdown of the mechanics of how these things work. So I would tell any kid to go to your local bookstore. They still exist. There's Amazon.com. Yeah. And just plug in the book for whatever your favorite movie is, and plug in your favorite movie and type in book, and I guarantee that book will probably exist. And you get that book, and your mind would open up in terms of all the different skill sets that are available. That will help you understand this industry more. So I would say start there. That's what I tell a lot of people to kind of find me. Through various whenever they Google me or whatever social media site they feel like they can find me at. And I tell them the same thing. Start here, and let's find out what you're good at. And then I can now sort of help you, tutor you to get into that process of understanding how to push your skill set forward to be an artist in this business. Yeah. Because we need more artists. We need young artists that have really, different inventive ideas. Who's going to be the next John Lasseter? Because we're going to need that, So I encourage kids to start there.
Well, you heard it here, folks. Ladies and gentlemen, Bruce Smith is the Michael Jordan beating, Bebe's Kids Directing, Proud Family creating animator behind so many...
Michael Jordan dunking on.
Let me add that to the list. It was a pleasure to have him on today. Of course, if you'd like to donate money to my friend Madeline, there's a link in the description below. Is there anything you want to say before we sign off?
Dude, well, thanks so much, and definitely donate. Yeah. I will for surely throw my 2 cents in there. So definitely make sure you send me a link also.
Oh yeah, sure. And the next episode of Cartoons vs. Cancer is, let me see if I can get this right, December 16th, I'm pretty sure, at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with Lynn Johnson, the creator of For Better or For Worse. Wow, a person who made a comic strip? It's going to be crazy and different, so you should totally be there. We will see you guys later. Goodbye. Goodbye.